They've influenced me greatly, as I said. This is the show where I talk about the musical sounds and artists who have helped shape my life. Welcome to Influencers. I'm TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. Today I'm going to do a little bit different than I usually do, as I'm going to talk about a topic of artists rather than just an individual artist, because I've talked about how important it is in my life. I grew up in the mid-70s. I came of age as a teenager and young adult in the late 70s and early 80s. But my first formative listens into purchases of my own was in the early 70s when I was 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And a lot of what I bought, as I've said in a number of places on my shows and such, is that I've always been into pop music. I've been into the charts. But mostly back then, I was into the acts that most kids ended up liking a lot. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble there. Most kids went in for the teen idols, and 1970s was full of them, and not all of them became as big as others. And I'm not going to talk about them all, but I'm going to talk about the ones that I have quite a bit of stuff by, and the ones that I really loved when I had them. Now, strangely enough, I actually do have some Bobby Sherman, but I didn't pull it because I haven't listened to the newer stuff that I bought from Adam, and the two older ones I have are in crappy shape. But I did like Bobby Sherman. Bobby Sherman was a good act. So was David Cassidy. But I never bought any of David Cassidy's albums. I only bought his 45s. I bought Partridge Family albums. I have all but one of those, and I've talked about them on the Partridge Family show, which you can go back and watch. But I had a group of other artists who were teens and 20s, probably, at the time they were recording. And I related to them because they were close to my age. They were in show business, which is where I wanted to be. I always wanted to be an actor and a singer back then. And I'm going to talk about some of those people. And all of them, I've got some one-shots and some multiples. And some of them had more success than others, like I said, but not all of them have done all that bad. And most of them have at least one song that's become a legacy song that you hear all the time. Not everybody, not the one-shots, but most of the other acts, you hear songs on the oldies channels, or you know what they are because you were around. So let's start with the most obvious of the early 70s pop performers. And I'm also going to leave Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 out of this because I'll probably do one on them eventually. But this is going to be about, they were more R&B leaning toward pop style, but we'll get to them eventually, but not in this show. The first big pop act that I got into were the Osmonds. Now, I have a number of Osmond albums. I'm not going to grab those because they were never as important to me as the two individual components of the Osmonds, Donnie and Marie. So we'll talk a little bit about them, and I'm also going to bring up a few other things. And it started off with Donnie and his first solo album. This is from 1970, the Donnie Osmond album, actually early 71. He was, I think, 12 at the time this came out. I was 6 or 7. This produced a top 10 hit called Sweet and Innocent, and that was also on the Osmonds' debut album for MGM. But Donnie always produced great music as a solo performer. In this particular case, he was produced by Rick Hall, and Sweet and Innocent was the only single, but the whole album was great. It had I'm Your Puppet, which was later included on his greatest hits album, My Best You, which I don't have here. I don't pull my greatest hits unless there's a reason to, if there's original stuff. Hey Little Girl, which was actually a top 40 hit by Foster Silvers, well, Hot 100 hit, but it was, I just had that on one of the radio retro countdowns a few weeks ago, and I didn't know Foster's had hit the chart. Um, it also includes some remakes like Wake Up Little Susie on it. Donnie it was great, and I loved him very much. He was a terrific artist. I got made fun of a lot for being a fan. And I'm sorry, but I always will like his voice. Second in the group was this album, To You With Love, Donnie. This included his biggest hit, Go Away Little Girl. And I actually didn't pick this up until 1978 when I grabbed it for $1.99 through Columbia House. At the time it came out, it was a premium title, a dollar more than most albums, so Mom and Frank wouldn't pay for it. But I wanted it very badly, and as a result of my getting it when I was older, it's actually in better shape than most of the Donny Osmond albums I have. Go Away Little Girl was, again, the only single off this album, although I love his cover of I'm Into Something Good, the Hermit's Hermit song, and I Knew You When, which was the flip side of, I think, either Go Away Little Girl or later on Hey Girl. And there's a lot of great stuff on here. Again, Rick Hall at the production. Recorded again at Muscle Shoals, Alabama, where the first one was recorded. It was a terrific album and a great, like I said, I think he was 13 when this came out. It was pretty damn good for a 13-year-old. The third album, Portrait of Donnie, 1972, I believe. Let me check. Yep. This was the first album with 2 hit singles on it, Puppy Love and Hey Girl. Loved both of those songs. Both of those were top 20 hits. And, of course, you have Donnie in his always, begging pose in the back there. This album originally came with some 8x10 candid photos, which are long missing. He, again, had some really great stuff here, and this was produced by a number of different people, including Mike Curb, Don Costa, Rick Hall, and a number of other people. Hey Girl and Puppy Love were both great big hits. My favorite song on this album was always Going, Going, Gone to Somebody Else. That was a great song, and deserved to be a hit of its own. I also like his cover of Hey There Lonely Girl, which had been a hit for Eddie Holman in 1970. Really great stuff there. The fourth album was Too Young. This is the album I never was really listened to that much even back then because I just didn't like everything that was on it. Too Young, again, was the only single. I think Why was released as a single also. But it wasn't as big a hit. He had started to slip a little bit. Mike Curb and Don Costa were the producers of this album. He did a cover of Donna here, Teenager in Love. There was a lot of covers here. And, am I mistaken? Yeah, this is the first album that also featured the Collab Records label, which is the Osmond's family label. They had also done that on their group albums at that point. This album is good. It's just not my favorite. I'm not really fond of all the songs on there. The next album in the lineup, I think it's called Alone Together. The one with 12th of Never on, I never picked up. I am in the market to finish my Donnie, early 70s Donnie collection. I still have 3 albums to go. This one, from 1973, and remember, they were doing sometimes as many as 3 albums a year at that time. It wasn't like you wait 2 or 3 years between albums at that point. This is actually a UK pressing of A Time for Us. I got this in the cutout bin later on. I love his version of A Time for Us, which is the theme from Romeo and Juliet, the movie. Also off this album, A Million to One was a flip side hit. I'm not sure if it was on Are You Lonesome Tonight or if it was on 12th of Never. Neither one of the singles did that well off this, and like I said, this is a UK pressing. You can tell because it has the London address for the fan club. Another album between, and then I accidentally, and the first thing I picked up when I was trying to complete the Donnie collection, and I actually picked up 2 copies of this, one from Adam and one from somewhere else, Adam at Record Crate. Didn't mean to get both of them, but one of them will eventually go out as a VCLT, I'm sure. 1976's Disco Train. Not the best name for an album if you're not into disco, but this includes Come On Marianne, which was his last top 40 hit until Soldier of Love in 1989. Also features Disco Dancin', which was later redone for one of the Donnie and Marie albums. The rest of this album is okay. It's not great. Again, produced by Mike Curb. And as a record producer, Mike was fantastic. I can't attest to how he was as a politician. I didn't live in California. I know he was lieutenant governor for a while, but he continues to run Curb Records and does a very good job at it, from what I can tell. Now, if there was Donnie at some point, then if you have Donnie and Marie, don't mind me bending over, then that means if there was Donnie, there was also Marie. Marie also was a favorite, and I only grabbed her first 4 albums. I have a couple of the later albums. But Paper Roses was the biggest hit of all of them. She, of course, hit number 10 on the pop chart, and I think she hit number 1 on the country chart with the remake of the Anita Bryant hit from 1960. Marie was 14 here. Great stuff. Again, that's the only single from the album. Great producer. I love this. Look at that pompadour on Sonny James' head. Sonny James produced this for her. And it was kind of crazy. That pompadour was nuts. I mean, that is a pompadour and a half. Marie's Paper Roses, always a favorite song, and she did a great job, and she proved that she had what it takes as a member of the Osmonds. She followed that up with an album I just recently picked up, 2000 or in 2019 or 2020, because I didn't have it before. In My Little Corner of the World. It's a pretty good album when I've listened to it. I listened to it once or twice, and I've heard it online. No really big hits on the pop chart from that one. She would later bounce back to the pop charts in the lower reaches with Who's Sorry Now. Of course, she was a country singer. Most of this is country. Who's Sorry Now, cover of Connie Francis's big hit. She also did Among My Souvenirs on this album. But when she really decided to go pop, it ended up becoming my favorite album. And I just recently re-grabbed this because I lost 150 albums on my cross-country move when I was 18. And a lot of the Osmond stuff was what went missing. Was part of what went missing. And I always loved this, and I grabbed it. I found it in a good shape about a year ago and grabbed it. This is The Way That I Feel from 1977. This is my favorite Marie Osmond album. It has the title track, which was her final solo top 40 hit during that era. It also has a cover of Please Tell Him I Said Hello, which was, there were a couple of competing versions that were minor hits on the AC chart. Great song called Play That Music Loud. And interestingly enough, though, it didn't include My Name is Alice, which was one of her singles during the early years of the Donnie and Marie show. We'll get to that in a second. So those I have, and this was also released on Polydor, so this is a reissue because the original was on MGM. Now, at least I think it was on MGM. Now, if you have Donnie and you have Marie, then that means you have Donnie and Marie. This is their first album. I'm leaving it all up to you. 2 great singles off this were both big hits. I'm leaving it all up to you and Morning Side of the Mountain. I was always partial to the Umbrella song, which was the flip side of one of those songs. This also is the first recording of It Takes Two, which became an integral part of the Donnie and Marie show, which they ended up using as theme songs here and there. The one thing that always got me about this is from 1974. That picture of Donnie. Does that not look like a waxwork, or is it just me? He looks like something that looks like he belongs in Madame Tussauds. This album is a really great album. Everything they do on here is great. They do a great cover of Let It Be Me also. And everything is top-notch on this. Now, I just picked this one up, too. I was missing this one, and I picked it up at the same time I picked up the Marie album. Make the World Go Away, which was their second album together. They didn't have any big hits off this. Make the World Go Away, which was the classic Eddie Arnold song, was one of the singles. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there was more than one single off this album or not. I'd have to look at the chart. But again, it's typical Donnie and Marie, and they did great stuff together. Third came songs from our television show. This was our songs from there, and featuring songs from their television show. This has Donnie's solo hit "Come On Marianne," which also was on Disco Train, and Marie's single "Hey, My Name Is Alice," which I do believe may have been a minor hit on the country chart. I'd have to look at my chart books to find out. It also had their final big hit as a duet, Deep Purple, a remake of the Nino Tempo and April Stevens song. But this album is best known for its remake of It Takes Two, which appeared originally on the first album, and of course a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, which became a theme for their midpoint medley, duet medley thing on the Donnie and Marie show. And also includes May Tomorrow Be a Perfect Day, which my pal Barry Scott uses as his closing theme for his long-time syndicated show, The Lost 45s. Very appropriate. Next up was New Season from 1976, I believe. This includes Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing was the single off this. And I always liked their version of Which Way You Going, Billy, which is actually more Marie, and Anytime Sunshine, both great songs. But for the most part, it was not a big hit. It wasn't as big a hit as their earlier stuff. By this point, the late 70s, the Osmonds were slowly starting to fall out of favor, to the point where the brother band decided to go country in the 80s with some more success. Most of these all come from Columbia House Records, because that's where I was a member for years. This one's from RCA. This is Winning Combination from 1977. Includes Winning Combination and Soul and Inspiration were the singles off here. They did chart on the top 40 with Soul and Inspiration. It barely stayed around for very long, but it was a good song, and the whole album is pretty good. Although you wouldn't recognize any of the other things, and you can see it was well played. I always enjoyed that. And then came the disco album, which bombed. This is from their movie, Going Coconuts, which was originally called Aloha, Donnie and Marie. But the one good thing about this album, in addition to On the Shelf, which became their final top 40 hit, and it peaked at like number 32, and a new version, an orchestral version of Tomorrow May a Perfect Day, and a few other things. It also includes You Bring Me Sunshine, which is one of my favorite songs by them overall, and was partially the theme for the final season of Donnie and Marie before they morphed into the Osmond Family Hour in 1979. Really great stuff. And the movie I've never seen. I've heard I haven't missed anything. So we'll leave it at that. But Donnie and Marie were just part of that. There were others that came earlier or before or around the same time. One of which that came out actually around the same time Marie's Paper Roses album came out was a family act from Canada called the DeFranco family. Tony DeFranco was amazing on vocals at 13. Of course, the song Heartbeat is a Love Beat and Abracadabra were both hits off this album. And they only lasted about 18 months before they slipped away. They were actually signed to LEG. I don't know if you can see that. That's Laufer Entertainment Group. That's the company that owned Tiger Beat magazine. And they also were on 20th Century Fox. This is the older copy. I have a better condition copy I bought recently. But I loved them, and I thought they were great. There isn't a bad song on that album or the follow-up album, Save the Last Dance for Me, from 1974. Never thought the album cover was all that great. I actually got I wrote him a fan letter when I was a kid, and I got an answer from Marissa, the older of the Marissa, yes, the younger of the sisters, right there. And I don't know whatever happened to it. I know I still have it somewhere. It's packed up somewhere. It's taped in the back because when I opened the envelope, I got excited and I ripped it. It was really kind of neat. This album contains Save the Last Dance for Me and Write Me a Letter, but not the single version. Write Me a Letter was remixed into more of a rock song for the single version. It's better. That version of Write Me a Letter is on the DeFranco family featuring Tony DeFranco, Heartbeat It's a Love Beat collection, which features all of the songs from both of these albums and 3 additional songs that were never released, but not We Belong Together, which I finally picked up on a 45 about a year and a half ago with a picture sleeve. That was the only thing they released that never appeared on either of their albums or on the CD that was released in 2001. So, I've always thought they were great. They had great harmonies, great vocals, and these were both produced by Walt Mescal, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, again for Mike Post Productions. Mike Post, of course, the TV theme impresario that did Hill Street Blues, Magnum PI, and all those things. Um, they went to Mike Curb for the third album, and it ended up getting aborted. He wanted them to become a covers act. Mike wanted everybody to be covers act back then. I never figured that out. Another duo that I loved in the 70s were the Keane brothers. You can poo-poo these guys all you want to. Tom Keane and his brother John, that's Tom seated and John on the piano, um, were some of the best songwriters ever for 13 and 12 years of age. Um, Most of this album was written by them, or Tom in particular. Um, and 3 singles from this album, only Sherry hit the Hot 100, the lower reaches of the Hot 100. But Amy, Show the Word You're There, which is about Amy Carter, who was the first child at the time, and Help Help were both big hits on the Kirkham Report charts. I loved Help Help. It was a #1 hit on my chart, and I still do. They had their own 4-week variety series in the summer of 1977 on Friday nights. It was funny, witty. You can catch one of them. There's one full episode on YouTube, and they both would grow up as time went on. This is the second album, Taken Off, from 1979. This one is more of a disco feel. It was the final record released by ABC Records right before MCA bought them out and dropped them like a hot potato. Again, some great stuff here. One of the best things on this album is their cover of I Want to Be Where You Are, which was done by a number of artists in the 1970s. But the original stuff on here is Love Not Enough and Rain or Shine in particular, Taken Off, the title track, and their cover of Dance in the Moonlight, which was the first single. I also have a 12-inch of that. Now, both of them have gone on to do some solo stuff in later years. John has gone on, that's the drummer, this one here, over on this side, is now working doing television scores. Tom remains one of the top producers and songwriters in Hollywood. He's won Grammys for work with Chicago and a number of other bands. And these were not the only 2 albums they did. They did 2 more albums with a group now known simply as Keane, not to be mistaken for the Irish band of the same name who became known for that, using that. But back in 80 and 82, they released 2 albums in Japan under the name Keane, which also included future Chicago member Jason Sheff. And both of those are terrific too. I have them on CD and I couldn't get to them. And one of those includes Trying to Kill a Saturday Night, which was also featured in the movie Zapped, which I had talked about on an earlier show, or a contest entry or something recently. Tom's son Mac is also an artist in his own right, and he has his own Instagram and YouTube page, and you should check it out because he's definitely inherited his father's abilities. Another act that I got into when it came out, and I just had to repurchase the first album because it was one of the ones I lost in that move, was Sean Cassidy. I'd been following Sean Cassidy when I was a kid. Friday meant new Tiger Beat, new 16, new 45, meant new something. And I followed all the teen magazines religiously back then, enjoyed them all, had a great deal of fun finding out about new artists, some of which I've never been able to find anything by. On Discogs, yeah, but I haven't ordered anything. Sean Cassidy was making news by the time he was 13 in the teen magazines, but of course he didn't break loose until he was 18 when he became Joe Hardy on the Hardy Boys. This is his 1977 debut album. This is a copy I got just a couple years ago to replace the one I lost. It's a regular label promo, but it includes his 2 probably his two biggest hits. They Did You Run Run, which hit number one, and That's Rock and Roll, which hit the top 10. Both of those were great songs. I don't know if it came with the poster or not. I'm not going to take it out to find out. So, but Sean was a great songwriter. He's also a great vocalist, and this album also included some of his earlier stuff from albums that had been released in the UK, including Morning Girl, which was a huge hit over there. And he also does a great job of Hey There Lonely Girl. He did have a penchant for doing songs written by the great Eric Carmen. That's Rock and Roll was a huge hit for Sean, which Eric later included on his solo album, or actually included on his solo album first. Sean covered it later. And off the second album, Born Late from 1978, early 78, late 77, Hey Deanie, also an Eric Carmen song. Hey Deanie was his third really big hit. Do You Believe in Magic was also released as a single off this album. Strangely enough, Teen Dream, which was one of my favorite songs on the album, was never released as a single in the States. I think it came out in the UK. Great gatefold picture of him at the piano when he was a kid. He was terrific, and I love these. The third album kind of tanked, and I'm missing something here. I just realized it. The third album was Under Wraps, and by this point the Hardy Boys was dying, and Sean's career was on the skids. But this album is just terrific. It produced Our Night and Midnight Sun, which is my favorite song by him. Midnight Sun, written by Peter McCann, best known for Do You Want to Make Love, and has some great stuff on it. He takes some real chances here. I really, of all the Sean albums I have, this is probably my favorite. Now, fourth album, I want to check and see, because I'm still missing one. I didn't realize I was still missing one. I'll have to go check. I thought I had it. I may have just misplaced it. The fourth album was Room Service, came out in 1979. Again, nothing huge hit off of it. Really good stuff like You're Using Me was on it. Is It Because of Love, which later became Only Because of Love, sorry, which was later adapted into a television theme for a short-lived show called Me and Max. And his cover of The Letter, the classic song, The Letter by the Box Tops. Terrific stuff. And I'm sorry I misplaced it. I don't know if it's up here or if I'm actually missing it. I'll have to check, because if I am, I'll have to reorder it. I got this again last year for the first time. I actually didn't have this one. This was the one I was missing. Sean Cassidy Live. Terrific live performances. I'm not a big live album person. I'll buy them occasionally if there's somebody I really like. But I mean, I think Frampton Comes Alive is a genius album, but other than that, not too many. But they did a good job with this. All of his big hits are here. And I'm pretty sure this came out after Room Service, but I'm not positive. So it may be the fourth album. The last one in the list, and the one that left me completely inexplicable last year, is 1980's Wasp. Now, he was deliberately trying to change his direction here, going back to the roots that he'd started with, more of a punk sound, which is how he started as a 13-year-old with his band Longfellow. And it's a good album. It's not a great album, and I was a bit surprised to see it come out on Record Store Day last year. That probably prompted by the fact that it's produced by Todd Rundgren. And I don't know. The album itself was out around the time Sean was doing the television series Breaking Away, where he was playing the Dennis Christopher role. Inner sleeve photos. It's not my kind of music, but I'm not a punk fan, and this is more pop punk than anything. He does a cover of Rebel Rebel here. He does a cover of It's My Life, So Sad About Us, Once Bitten, Twice Shy. It's not a bad album by any stretch of the imagination, but there was nothing to make me think it would sell Record Store Day price copies, and it didn't. It stiffed most people that brought it in. He's pretty much not done much music until just the last year. He returned to his musical roots. He spent the last 30 years as a producer, writer, creator. He created the television series American Gothic, among other things. And he's just now getting back into his musical roots. He's been touring with a one-man show, and I'd love to see it if he comes up here. The one act that I think I have the most of, and I have several. Oh, Sean Cassidy also did a terrific cover, a vocal cover of A Star Beyond Time, which is the Ilias theme from Star Trek The Motion Picture. I did pick it up on a 45 also recently. It's not on any of his albums. The other teen idol that I was heavy into, both as an actor and as a musician, if you can call him that, from time to time, is this guy, Leif Garrett. Leif first started with a single on 20th Century Fox Records early in 1977, a remake of Bobby V's Come Back When You Grow Up Girl. And it wasn't great. I have the 45. It took me a while to get it when it came out. They had a heck of a time getting it for me, but they finally did get it. When he did return, he signed with Atlantic and came out with this album. Surfin' USA was his first breakthrough, a remake of that classic Beach Boys song. And this album also featured remakes of Runaround Sue, which hit number 13 on the chart, The Wanderer, and Put Your Head on My Shoulder, all of which hit the Hot 100, but only Runaround Sue and Surfin' USA made the top 40. And remakes of California Girls, Johnny Be Good, and some original stuff as well. Leif also always had original songs on his flip sides, so if you're fortunate enough to have the singles, you've got several original songs that have never been released on LP or CD, including a great song called Love on the Run, which I believe was on the flip side of I Was Made for Dancing? No, it was on one of the Atlantic albums. Must have been Put Your Head on My Shoulder. But this album, I played this album to death when I was in freshman in high school. Loved him. Still like him as an actor. He's still a goofball. And he's been through all kinds of hell and back, and most of it of his own making. And yes, it's echo chamber friendly. It's not Scott Baio echo chamber friendly. Leif can actually carry a tune when he wants. Yeah, that was... He was a big part of my life. The second album was the biggest album, Feel the Need, from 1978. This featured his top 10 hit, I Was Made for Dancing, and his top 20 club hit, Feel the Need, along with remakes of Sheila from Tommy Rowe. And, oh, yes, and also his big AC hit, When I Think of You, which actually charted higher on the adult contemporary chart than it did on the pop chart. It was they did a remix of it for the single release, and it was terrific. Now, I've always hated this picture. I have to admit, this picture is just so doofy looking. Even back then, I thought it was doofy looking. I have purchased, this is my original copy. This is when Atlantic switched into Scotty Brothers for release. And it's a great album. I mean, he's got a great version of Groovin' on here, Felix Cavalier's song. But the singles are the best here. And Feel the Need, the single, was a completely new recording. This album version is nowhere near as good as the single version, which is the version that's on the Leif Garrett Collection CD, which came out in 1997, I believe. I do have a later cutout copy, which does have the inserts in it that came with the album, pictures and such. And of course that bottom picture there, right here, that's the cover from the single version of I Was Made for Dancing, which was the big hit off the album. By this point, this was about as good as Leif was going to get. And strangely enough, despite 3 more albums, he never made it back to the top 40 on the national charts. He did do well. I'm sure he'll show up on Radio Retro one of these days because he's got, quite a few other hits out there that were popular on local levels, but not on national levels. The third album, Same Goes For You, was released, timed to coincide with his appearance on the 2-hour season premiere of Chips in 1979. It included the official singles, Memorize Your Number, and I Was Looking for Someone to Love. The single version of When I Think of You is on this album. The album version is on the other album. and a song he did on Chips called Give In, which I thought was the best song on the album. The one thing that scares me on this entire album is his cover of Singing in the Rain. It's a disco cover of Singing in the Rain, a disco rock cover of Singing in the Rain, which is really, really terrifying. There's the back cover. That, I believe, might be taken from his TV special. This cover, I hate this cover. This cover is terrible. I just, that's such a terrible picture. He looks so, like, doofy there. Um, the album itself is good, and I loved, I loved it. I like his cover of Kicks, which surprised me at how good it is, of the Paul Revere song. But again, as much as I enjoy Singing in the Rain, it might terrify some people. The fourth album, 1980's Can't Explain, excuse me, 1981's Can't Explain, didn't go anywhere. This is when he had started to push back. These first three albums, Same Goes For You, Feel the Need, oops, and the debut album, were a lot of covers, a lot of pop stuff. Leif wanted to rock. He was a rock fan. And so, like Sean Cassidy before him, we got Can't Explain. Easily the least of his five albums. It has a great single called You Had to Go and Change on Me, which was a great song, and it was a pop song to make sure that he got the airplay, although it didn't, I think it peaked in the 80s on the Hot 100. But he does covers of rock songs here, and they're rock covers. Bare Trees, Stuck in the Middle with You, which I really like his version of. Gimme Gimme Good Lovin', Run Run Run, JoJo Gunn's song. Bits and Pieces, the Dave Clark 5 classic. Can't Explain, Pete Townsend. In all honesty, this is the album I like the least. It has the best cover. There's the back of it. And the album that ended up being my favorite was his last album. He was signed to a 5-album deal with Atlantic / Scotti Brothers, and the final album came out in early 1982, when he was, I think he was 20. My Movie of You. This was an album that was way better than anything else, and it deserved a lot more attention because it took some chances. He did a little bit of rock stuff. He co-wrote one of the songs on Can't Explain. He also co-wrote one of the songs on this album. But there's some stuff on here that's a little bit different than what he'd done. I mean, there's some pop stuff. It is still pop stuff, but the songs are better. And they're more original. I don't think there's even one cover on here. I might be wrong. But they were trying to market him to an older audience at this point. He was in his 20s now. This is right before he shot The Outsiders. And to me, it's his best album. It was produced by Shun Takura and John Andrea. Obviously, some connections that he had with Japan there. Runaway Rita, great song, and so is Momo Way, which is, I would have put out as a single. I thought it was great. Leif was great always to me. And of course, he got in so much trouble as he got older, and he's lucky he didn't end up in jail. And, the numerous arrests for drug use and stuff. But he still pops up on shows every now and then. He was a regular on World's Dumbest for several seasons, and funny as hell on there. And he's still out there. Don't write him off. Another artist that I like, that I don't have enough by, and I'd love to get more by, is kind of strange because I only speak the language part of the time. Because he's French-Canadian. And he was always adorable and always an incredible singer. His name, René Simard. If you were from 1975 to 1979, René was a top teen idol in Canada and a growing teen idol in the States. This album I just picked up. I believe I got this from Adam at Record Crate. This is in French and is from, let me see what year this is from. I think it's 1974. This is one of his early albums. he made his name in America on a short-lived variety series, the original Saturday Night Live. Only this one was Saturday Night Live with Howard Cosell. It was a variety series on Saturday nights, broadcast live. He made several appearances on that show. He would later transition to an hour-long variety show of his own in 1977 or 78 that was produced by Alan Thicke, and it was aimed at the American market, but it only got picked up on 6 or 7 American channels. It was a staple on the CBC. And it was also done mostly in English. But this album, I'm not even going to try it because I will mispronounce it. He already had a stellar voice here. Now, by the time his voice changed, and I actually visited Canada in 1978, we went up there to see Bedrock City, which was a Flintstones attraction in Kelowna. And on our way home, we stopped at a mall, and they had a record store, and I picked up Renee's newest album at that time. Never know the reason why. This was in English, all the songs in English. Still terrific. At this time, he was 17 and starting to mature. Renee got out of the business. I mean, he continued to perform in Vegas and a few other places, but he didn't do a lot of recording from the early 80s on. He released an incredible new album in 2018, and I just love it, and it's fantastic, and I downloaded it immediately. It's half English and half French, and it's fantastic. He's still got it, even in his mid-50s, early 60s. He's still fantastic. Now, those are the primaries. But I also have some one-shots, and in one of these cases I have a two-shot, but I can't find it. I bought another one by him, but I don't have it handy. A lot of teen stars did at least one album, and sometimes they did more. And not all of them were really equipped to do it, but I enjoyed them when they were out, or when I got it. I wish I could have enjoyed this a little more. I bought this in my first record auction way back in 1983, where you mailed it in and they let you know you won. And it's off center, so it doesn't play well. But I remember when it was in all the stores, I never picked it up at the time. Little Jimmy Osmond and Killer Joe. He was 7 or 8 when this came out. He was my age. Jimmy's just a few months older than me. And it gets worse and worse as you go into the interior of the record because it's slightly off center. I have another album by him that I picked up from Adam at Record Crate that's over here in the still to listen pile, and I couldn't find it. But Little Jimmy Osmond is, of course, one of the Osmond connections. There was Ralph Carter. Ralph was Michael Evans on Good Times in the 1970s. This album produced Young and in Love and Extra Extra, Read All About It, both of which were hits on the R&B chart. He didn't cross over to the pop chart that well, but he continued to do well afterward. I believe, I remember reading somewhere, he eventually was singing on Broadway for a while. Terrific guy, terrific album. Great dance music. Not strictly dance, it's not just strictly disco either. It came out in 1976, so you think it would, but it has a very R&B feel to it. Shown this numerous times. Christy and Jimmy McNichol. This is my old original copy. I have a newer copy in better shape with the poster. Christy and Jimmy never hit the chart in a big way. He's So Fine peaked at number 72, I think it was, on the Billboard Hot 100. But this album, full of great disco and slow dance, which I talked about a few weeks ago on another show. Look around for it. He's a dancer, Page by Page, Girl, You Really Got Me Going. My Boyfriend's Back, Slow Dance, He's So Fine. Box on Wheels, Go For It, Rock and Roll's Here to Stay, and Hot Tunes. If you can stay away from Jimmy, you got a great album. Jimmy's not the best singer in the world. And Christy, although she never released another album of her own, she is very prominent on the soundtracks to The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, which features a song called I Need You Strong for Me that she did solo, and is a duet with Dennis Quaid called Hanging Up the Gun, and of course numerous songs on the soundtrack for the Pirate movie. So she was always great, and I think she should have recorded more. And then there are the little kids. Rodney Allen Rippey was a TV spokesperson. He co-hosted the Harlem Globetrotters Popcorn Machine. in 1973 or 74 for CBS. Um, this is actually a promo copy. I just picked this up last year for $2. Yeah, it's in pristine shape, and I haven't played it. It was actually sealed when I bought it, so it's in near mint shape. Um, I've heard some of the tracks on YouTube, and for us, I think he was 6 when he recorded this. It's not bad. I mean, it was cute. He got out of the business as he got older, and then of course I've talked about this before. Ricky Seagull, now Dr. Rick Seagull, and his family, the Seagulls. He was featured on the 4th and final season of The Partridge Family as their new next door neighbor, the cousin Oliver of the Partridge Family. And I know that's mean, but what is it about these cousin Olivers and they're getting into music? Robbie Rist was later a dead ringer for John Denver, and of course was part of Kid Video in the 1980s. And Danny Cooksey, who was the cousin Oliver on Different Strokes, went on to lead Bad for Good. And Ricky Seagull, he went to become Dr. Rick Seagull. He's a chiropractor in the Los Angeles area now. But it was fun and it was cute, and I've actually found a new copy of this, which you can pick up a brand new, because mine, I'll be honest, I played this a lot. I loved this album. But you can see, oh my lord, you can see the scratches on this thing. It was when I still had a little suitcase turntable, when I was in my, I don't know, 10 or 11 when it came out. But I loved it, and I still love it, and I think it's cute. And he went on to bigger and better success. What can you say? There are other teen idols out there that I love that I have not included here, and I stuck with the 70s mostly. I could do a whole show on the Jackson 5, like I said, and I probably will at some point. I don't have that much of their stuff, but I've been a fan for years. Bobby Sherman is the same way, David Cassidy. There's also Jack Wilde, who I was a huge fan of. In fact, Jack Wilde's picture on a cover of Tiger Beat was what got me to buy my first teen magazine. At the time, he was starring in H.R. Pufnstuf, and I hadn't seen Oliver, so I didn't know him from that. But Jack's story is such a tragic one, and he passed away at only 52. The last 2 years of his life, he had no voice. They had to take out his vocal cords due to oral cancer. And he was a brilliant singer and actor. I didn't really want to get into that. I do have a couple of Jack's albums and a couple of 45s. Rick Springfield started off that way also. He was a rocker, but he was classed as a teen idol. They had him in Tiger Beat and 16 and all those when Speak to the Sky was on the chart. If you don't know that song, we did do it on Obscuria a few weeks ago, so you might want to look it up. And of course, Mission Magic made him into a Saturday morning star. There was also the Brady Kids, who released 4 albums over the course of 5 years, including the Christmas album, and then the 3 albums, Meet the Brady Bunch, The Kids in the Brady Bunch, and Photographic album. Never had the 3rd one, but I had the other 2. And I have the collection on CD. And they were all pretty good. And some of them had taken shots at their own singles. Eve Plum, who of course was the daughter of recording producer Neely Plum, had a couple of singles out which were dreadful. And Maureen McCormick and Chris Knight did their own album, of which half was dreadful. Maureen was great. She later tried a country career that didn't go anywhere. Barry Williams released a single called Sweet Sweetheart, which didn't take off. It's on the Brady Collection album, though. And Mike Lookenland, who did a single called Love Doesn't Care Who's in It, I think it's called, around the time he appeared on the Towering Inferno. Of course, all 3 brothers were just on The Masked Singer this season. Christopher and Barry and Mike all got to bat together and were the mummies on The Last Singer this past season. I didn't see it, so I don't know. In any case, teen idols have been a big part of my life, and they've influenced me greatly, as I said. Particularly Donnie Marie Osmond, Christy McNichol, and Leif Garrett. I listened to them constantly when I was a kid, and the Keane brothers. If you're into teen idols and you like that kind of music, these are good stuff. These are real good stuff. And I still enjoy these all the way around. My friend Jeff over at Calico Silver, he's still a huge Partridge Family fan like me. So is the other Jeff McRockmack over at Jeff's Hard Rock, Mega Jeff's Hard Rock, Rock Hard, whatever it is now. He's also a big Partridge Family fan, and there's some great stuff out there from all these different teen idol acts. Eventually, I would continue to do it in the '80s. I continued to purchase teen idol acts because I liked them. Debbie Gibson, Tiffany, Glenn Scarpelli had an EP out for a while. Continued later stuff from Leif Garrett. There I showed the one. And again, the Keens, which I have on CD, and even the inevitable and unavoidable Scott Baio albums, which are part of my collection. The second album is way better than the first one. And there were other acts too. But I've always liked that kind of pop, and it's part of who I am. It always will be. My teen idol days are behind me, unfortunately, but I still love the music from the teen idols of the '70s, '80s, '90s, and beyond. Although today's I don't really pay much attention to. I know, certain younger stars have had stuff out from the Disney Channel, Asher Angel from the Shazam movies, and those guys. I really haven't paid that much attention. A lot of it's hip hop, which I don't really care for, but it's like, it's still ongoing. It hasn't ever stopped, and it never will. For every Leif Garrett or Donny Osmond, the next generation will bring us a New Kids on the Block, or Debbie Gibson, and the following generation dishes up Justin Bieber. So there's always kids out there, and they're always going to be singing, and they're always going to be teen idol types. Not all of them grow up to be critically acclaimed, but some of them do, and or behind the scenes like Tom Keene, and they're worth checking out. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel, and if you haven't done so, and if you have done so, thank you. And I hope you'll leave a comment on this or anything else you watch, because I love talking to you and love hearing what you think of what I've got to offer. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and I'm just hitting the very needle, the eye of the needle, and I have a lot more to go on influencers as I prepare to get another season of it launched with new artists and stuff, because I still have one more act to do that's in my opening credits. I haven't done it yet because I'm re-listening to some of the music right now, but it'll be coming up before the end of November, and then I'm going to take December off, and when that happens, January will bring a new season with new people that have influenced my life, because these are the people that make me who I am. I'm TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. Thank you for watching, influencers. We'll see you soon. Ciao, baby.